I'm James Smartt. I'm an IR major with a paramedic emphasis, and this is my testimony. So I guess this testimony begins when I was 18. When I was 18, I had been in a emotionally and physically abusive relationship for 3 years. I had had a pretty solid belief in Christ all through that time, but it was a little bit difficult because in an atmosphere of Adventists, I had not really gotten any assistance in the situation that I was coming across. And so when I was 18, I finally decided to break up with that person. One of the people that helped me through that was one of my best friends for the past 5 years at that point. A little bit after my breakup through high school, she said that she was interested in dating, and I was like, cool, let's do that. And over the course of that relationship, I grew increasingly convinced that she was the one. This is it. This is end of the road. She's awesome. She's been my best friend for 5 years. She is everything that was not in the abusive relationship that I was in. She really cared and was awesome, and I honestly thought that this was it. This is the end, right? And so I went off to college at Union, and I was a super long way away. Over that period of time, we started growing apart, which is kind of difficult because we started off our relationship in long distance. And so as she started growing apart, I kind of got stressed, but I, in my mind, kind of just threw it off. I was like, this is fine. This is it. We're gonna make it because this is it, right? This is end of the road. And the day after Valentine's Day of my first year at Union, she broke up with me. And I was absolutely devastated. For effectively 2 months, I went into a catatonic state, and I was horribly depressed. I had a lot of negative thoughts that I had never experienced before during that time. A lot of it had to do with suicidal ideation, which I had never experienced before prior to that happening. A lot of the struggles that I was experiencing, I had never really had before. I had my first panic attack. I had all of these different thoughts that were happening, and really the only thing that got me through any of that situation was my family at Union College and God, and that's it. During that time, I had a lot of prayers with God because I was really frustrated and I was angry and horribly sad, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I read my Bible a lot and just trying to find answers to why this happened and what circumstances caused this. And I was having a conversation with, I call it the Theo table, because it's where all the theology majors sit. And I was having a conversation with them, and it wasn't even super serious, but the topic of this conversation was we too often look to the Bible for answers to our questions that concede to our ideas, that are what we think they should be. And a lot of times when we read the Bible, it's important to be able to look at the Bible and read the actual message and find out what it's actually telling us, instead of looking for what we want to see. And so I reread through the Bible, and a lot of the passages that I was reading of it was about prayer and how God answers prayer. And the thing that I needed to read that I didn't want to read was that God gives and God takes away. And that really stressed me out. But again, I had a Union College family that was there to support me through that horrible time. And I hung out a lot with theology majors, but for a large portion of that time, I kind of disappeared into my room and was just there. I had a lot of people at Union reach out to me and try and get a hold of me and contact me during that time. Another major thing that got me through that time was the Chosen, the show. I binge watched that show. At first, when it was first suggested that I should watch it, I was apprehensive because I've seen a lot of Christian media that is just not. I feel like it doesn't represent Christ in a way that is realistic. And then I watched The Chosen, and I was like, this is fantastic, this is awesome, I'm gonna watch the rest of this. And so I watched season 1 and season 2 in the span of like a week. And that really got me back into reading my Bible, not just for answers, but for the stories and the actual motifs within them, and reading for what Christ wanted to share instead of what I want to hear. And that kind of accumulated over summer program, where during the first 3 weeks of summer program, I read through the entirety of the Old Testament. There was a period of summer program where you're alone for 3 days in the woods, and you don't have any food, and you have to collect your own water. And during that time, it got really hard, because one of the main things that I was using to kind of get out of the headspace that I was in was social contact and being able to talk to people. All of a sudden, that was gone. I no longer had social contact. The first day that I was out there, some of the first thoughts that came back to me were those horrible self-negative thoughts that had started in February. And the only way that I could ever get out of that headspace was whenever I was reading the Bible. And so I read from Genesis to Esther in those 3 days. It was good for me to look and read through that and be able to find every single portion where it was referencing to referencing Jesus, referencing the Messiah, and coming back, and everything that leads up to Christ. And so after that, after I finished the Old Testament, I started on the New Testament, and I started correlating everything. And it was just a really, really fun and helpful period to just read through the entire Bible. That's kind of where I got to where I am now, where I'm not suffering with those emotions nearly as much. There's still some, I'm never going to get rid of, I'm never going to go back to the period before I had that sadness. But I am at a point where I've learned how to deal with it and grow from it with Christ. Thank you for listening to my story. I really appreciate it. If you have a testimony that you would like to share, please reach out to Campus Ministries.